I am so excited that you are joining us for our first virtual learning experience of this week. And we have a few more coming throughout the week, which we're going to introduce to you at the end of our show. Today, we have a special treat for you. We have Tim Towslee joining us. He is a scout leader, a teacher, a leave no trace master educator, and he has been hiking through Shenandoah National Park and preparing for this live experience for you all. So teachers, as your students have questions, please type them in the chat, and Tim is going to be answering them throughout today's live experience. So Tim, over to you.
Hey friends, how are we doing? I've got a couple of things for us today, and there are a lot of things here actually, and a lot of stuff we'll be doing live here, but then there's also some things that you could follow up with to do asynchronously outside of this experience. And there is a document that I believe is going to be shared in the chat for you that has a bunch of links. I'm going to share it on my screen really quickly just so that you can see what we're looking at here. So give me just 1 second. So this is the document that you will see, and it'll also be on the EdTech website. It's got a little bit of a description here, and then a bit of an agenda. I got to tell you, the agenda is going to be a little bit wonky because just like when we're in the woods on the trail, things don't always go exactly as we plan, so you have to plan for that. Anyhow, here you have some links to various places. For instance, the Shenandoah National Park website. There is an infographic about Leave No Trace itself, which talks about the 7 principles, and then these 7 principles that are there. And really, the Leave No Trace principles, while they are specific to backcountry and front country recreation and being ethical in the outdoors, they really kind of apply everywhere. And some of this will kind of click for you, I think. And we'll get into those principles in just a second, but I'm going to walk you through some of these other things. So I take 3 hikes in this series. The first is down to White Oak Canyon, which is, well, it's a big canyon, and there are some surprises along the way that we're going to check out, including some waterfalls. And I do find some trash, and we're going to talk about what to do when you find trash in the outdoors. The second hike is to President Herbert Hoover's summer retreat. It is called the Brown House. Not unlike the White House. It's the White House in the woods is what I like to call it. It's where he would take people fly fishing. Yeah, and he's even got a cabin for his friend, the Prime Minister of England, and some other stuff that's all down there, and it's all still there. And then we're going to take a little bit of a look at this place called Blackrock Summit, which is one of my favorite places to take people hiking when they've never been hiking before, because it's not too terribly hard, but you get to hike on the Appalachian Trail, which is world famous, and you get a big payoff after a very short hike. And then we'll wrap up, and I've got a few other things that you could do to extend our activities here. So in addition to those, I've got the full clips of the videos that we're going to look at. We're going to see kind of some pared down, shortened ones. And then I've got the full clip on this page here. And there's also a map of where I hiked in case you wanted to replicate that hike on your own hike, you know, so that's got the mileage and it's got some elevation. Virginia, especially the part of Virginia where I was in, is considerably more mountainous than any part of Florida I've ever been to. But so it might be tough to get the elevation, but you could definitely get the mileage. And then there are some other resources that go along with each of these activities, which we'll talk about in a bit. So let's talk about the principles very, very quickly. I'd like to share with you the 7 Leave No Trace principles, and I believe you're going to see them again in my video because I walked through them very quickly. And there are 7 of them. The first one is to plan ahead and prepare. The second one is to hike and camp on durable surfaces. Number 3 is to dispose of waste properly. Number 4 is to leave what you find. Number 5 is to minimize campfire impacts. Number 6, and this is my favorite, it becomes a hand turkey, is to respect wildlife. And then number 7 is to be considerate of other visitors. That was a high sign and peace sign. Okay, so I think we can jump into our first video, and this is the one where I hiked to the White Oak Canyon. There's some.
Hey friends, my name is Tim Towslee, and I am an outdoor educator, scout leader, and a Leave No Trace master educator. And I'm standing here in Shenandoah National Park. And we're gonna take a little trip around the park and talk about the principles of Leave No Trace. One of the things that you guys might find interesting, we're learning about citizenship, and we talk a lot about digital citizenship and how to be, a good neighbor and a good friend. But oftentimes we don't really think about how we can be a good citizen in the outdoors, and that's what we're going to talk about today. There are 7 principles of Leave No Trace, and I'll give you some hand signals to remember them. Number 1 is to plan ahead and prepare. Number 2 is to hike and camp on durable surfaces. Number 3 is to dispose of your waste properly. Number 4 is to leave what you find. Number 5 is to be careful with fire. Number 6 is to respect wildlife. And number 7 is to be respectful of other visitors. So one of the things that we're going to look at today is what's called the track trails. And these are a program of the National Park Service to get kids outside and into parks. This particular trail that we're on is, it's called the Limberlost Trail. And the Limberlost Trail is actually an ADA trail, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means it is an inclusive trail that is open to any visitor in the park. Something that you might find interesting is that this land right here, it all belongs to us. It does. This is public land that is owned by the government for the people of the United States of America. And not all of those people can hike on really challenging trails. So this is a relatively accessible trail designed to get young people out in the woods and enjoying some of the sounds of nature. So before I head down the trail, we want to talk about Leave No Trace principle number 1. Principle number 1 is to plan ahead and prepare. And this actually happens, starts before we even leave our house. Sometimes we need to know where we're going. We need to know what we want to do when we get there. And we need to know if there are any kind of regulations. For instance, right at the moment, we are at the base of Old Rag Mountain. I could turn the camera around and show you some trees that are blocking the view of Old Rag Mountain. But if we wanted to climb up Old Rag, we would need a permit. It's the only place in the park that you need a permit to hike, but it's because it is so busy that people it's in demand, and we don't want to overload the use of that trail because that could erode the trail and make it more challenging for other visitors to enjoy it. But the next thing we're going to do is we want to make sure that we have what we need, So I've planned ahead and I've gotten here, but I needed to know how to get here. I needed to know where I was going. So I scoped out some trails, and I wanted to show you this one first because it's accessible to everyone. We are going to look at some more challenging trails in a little bit and hopefully see some waterfalls and maybe some critters, but I need to be prepared for those things. And that's going to involve doing some hiking, so I need to have the right shoes, I need to have, the right clothes. It's a little bit chilly-ish today, definitely by Florida standards. It's about 52 degrees, and it's going to warm up a little bit, but it's not really going to get hot. But I've still needed to bring some things along, and I'll share some of these with you. First of all, I am wearing long pants and a long shirt, and I have a hat in my pack, but I don't think I'm going to need it today. But some other things that I need to hike on this trail, these are things that you should bring with you anytime you embark on any kind of journey like this. So you can see this assortment here. I've got a first aid kit, which I'm going to need, hopefully not use, but I need it just in case, right? I've got rain gear. Now, it's pretty beautiful out. I don't suspect I'm going to need the rain gear, but it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. This is what I'm definitely going to need, and that's snacks. One of the things that I love about hiking is there should be a lot of snacks. But notice how these snacks have some wrappers. I want to be very careful with those wrappers, so I want to plan to have a way to pack those out, and that's why I've got them in my pack here. Got some hand sanitizer. We are still living in a pandemic, so we want to be, clean, but we want to be clean anyway. Sometimes if there's some dirty things on the trail, we don't want to get sick just with a cold or with anything else. Most important, I've got my water bottle. I've got a liter of water here. The trail that I'm going to hike today is about 3 miles round trip. First, we're going to start on the Limberlost Trail, but then I'm going to jump off of that trail and go down to this waterfall, which is in White Oak Canyon. So it's not too hot, so a liter ought to do me okay to do 3 miles round trip. But there is some elevation, so I want to be aware of that. So I might want to bring some extra water if it was really hot. I do have extra water in my vehicle, but I don't need to take it with me right now. I'm trying to pack light. I've got a headlamp or a flashlight. And you might be thinking, well, it's beautiful, it's really sunny out, why would I need a flashlight? Well, you never know. You never know what could happen. And if you get stranded and it gets dark, you know, you definitely want to be able to find your way around, because you start to kind of go a little bit loopy if you can't find your way around, and it's scary. And the worst thing to be when you are lost is scared. I've got some this is looks like chapstick, but I actually use this. It's got SPF 35 in it. I actually use this on my face to keep the sun off. It's really small, really compact, and it works pretty well. Also, I've brought a compass in case I need to navigate out of here, and I've got a map of the park so that I can figure out where I am in relation to where I parked my vehicle. Some other sources of information are the trailhead signs, and this kiosk talks about the Limberlost Trailhead, and it gives us some information about the flora and fauna, so that's trees and critters, as well as some of the improvements of the trail. And then here you can see in this map, it tells us exactly where this trail goes, and it connects to some other trails that will actually lead us up to White Oak Canyon, which is where we're going to find those waterfalls. Now, there's some really cool stuff on this trail that it's really in the whole park. There's a lot of stuff that existed before this was a national park, and they left it there. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get to principle number 4. But right now, we want to get on that trail and get down there. One other thing that I wanted to point out is that sometimes we're looking for critters. Now, when I hike, I like to look down these trails and I want to find things. I want to find lizards, I want to find birds, I want to find rabbits and squirrels, and I want to find bears, and if I'm lucky, I want to find the Sasquatch. So I have brought my guide to relic hominids in case we can find the Bigfoot. Bigfoot doesn't actually live here, but there might be a Sasquatch. And they are the best practitioners of Leave No Trace because, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? Have you ever seen a Sasquatch? I don't think so. Maybe your uncle has, and he's got some photographic documentation of it, but I've never seen one, and I've been looking my entire life. Maybe today's the day. Let's hope. So as we hike this trail, take a look at some of the features here. We're going to see a bunch of different terrains today, and something that you'll notice about this one is it's especially wide and flat, and here we've got a nice little bench to sit on. Now, I mentioned that this was an American Disabilities Act trail. One of the things that was a requirement for that is that you need to be able to push a wheelchair down here. So this might be helpful for some folks who have some mobility challenges, but it could also be a good trail for younger people as well. You could push a stroller, you could pull a wagon. So this one is a great trail for families or people who just want to get out and kind of take this all in, but they might not be able to hike, a long Appalachian Trail style hike. And I'll show you the difference between that and this in just a few. Okay, we've traveled quite a bit here on the Limberlost Trail, and I wanted to just take a moment to talk about Leave No Trace principle number 2. Principle number 2 is to hike and camp on durable surfaces. Now, we've been hiking on this trail of nice, smoothed out, crushed gravel. But look over here. What kinds of things do you notice? It's not smooth. It's rough. It's a lot more natural. There's all kinds of things that live in that stuff. And sometimes when it's rainy, not as nice as it is now, that gets really muddy and swampy and marshy. And we don't want to go in there because then we might disrupt that ecosystem. You know, we'll leave footprints, and we will eventually dig trenches and create these social trails that can cause water runoff problems and some erosion problems, and that would leave the park, you know, nastier than we found it. We want to leave it better than we found it. We've come to a trail intersection. Now this one, if you look at that trail, looks a lot different from the crushed gravel that we've been walking on. You couldn't push a wheelchair up that trail. That one is more for hiking, and you might need some further equipment rather than just, you know, your shoes for that. Notice it is marked with a blue blaze that says that that's where the trail is, and that actually goes up to a place called Crescent Rock. We're not going to go there today because we want to check out a waterfall and hopefully a sasquatch. Okay, we have reached a trail junction, and this is the one that we want. And if this sign wasn't here, I'd still know it was the one that we wanted because I read a map and noticed that the White Oak Trail, which is the one that goes down to the waterfall that we want, is a little bit more rugged than this nice smooth Limberlost Trail. But we're going to go this way because I looked at the map. Check out these cool rock features over there. I don't want to get too close to them because, well, I don't want to violate principle number 2, is what we're talking about, which is staying on the path. Got a blue blaze, so we're going to follow this blue trail until we get to the Sasquatch's lair, or at least a waterfall. Definitely the waterfall, maybe Sasquatch.
All right. So you might be asking why I'm not filming this from the trail. Well, the truth of the matter is we are on the internet, and there is no internet access in the national park, this one. Some of them have some spotty access at best, but this one has next to none in the entire park. So I had filmed it, and then we could kind of talk about it after the fact. So at this point in the trail, we've hopped off the Limberlost Trail, and I'm just curious to see or hear, what did you guys notice? And do you have any questions about what we've seen or what we've talked about so far? So you can put those into the chat, and I will answer them. And thank you, Tony, for identifying that a little baby could hike the Limberlost Trail just as well as anyone. Yes, thank you. Teachers can ask their students, and we can put them in the chat. What are the names of some of the trees? We're going to talk about some of those. Most of the ones that are around there are white oaks because we're leading into White Oak Canyon. They're very, very tall. They've got these really cool leaves that, you know, have this really kind of wild pattern. They don't look exactly like the leaves that we think of when we think of, you know, a textbook leaf. To be perfectly honest, I could talk about conserving all that nature, but I don't really know the names of every tree or animal or critter or flora fauna that we're going to come across. But I do know that there are lots and lots of white oaks in that area. So the question is, how rare is it to find the Sasquatch? I won't divulge how old I am. I am older than I look. In all of my years, I have never seen the Sasquatch. And this is an advertisement from Leave No Trace, and it's a little tag that you could put on your backpack, and it says, "Leave no trace, Bigfoot's been doing it for years," because we haven't found him. Sometimes there are some footprints, allegedly. There are some alleged photographs, but in real life, we've never been able to sit down and talk with the Sasquatch about their ways. So very, very rare. There are actual bears. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are actual bears, and I have seen a bear on, not Limberlost, but on White Oak Trail. I see another question here. What happens if we run out of supplies? Well, we try to avoid that. We try to avoid running out of supplies, but there are some things, and that's going to come up again too. So I want to table that question if I can. How many times have I hiked at this park? This is the closest national park to me, so I don't think I could put a number on it. I try to get up there as often as I can, and in this season, it's usually once every week or two. It's about an hour and a half from me, so not too far. You can hike the trails at night. However, it's not advised. You typically want to stay off of the trail at night because those critters that come out in the daytime, they're going to leave people alone. The ones that come out at night, they can be kind of scary, and they can sometimes sneak up on you when you can't see as well. Let's see. So the trail that I just showed you, and there is a link to this particular trail in the agenda there. This one is only 1.1 miles. And I hate to say exactly how long that would take because people hike at different paces. And that's one of the important things to know in hiking. We say you hike your own hike. You don't have to go quickly, but some people want to go quickly. I like to go pretty slowly because I like to look at critters. So if I were to hike a mile, I could probably do that in about 18 minutes, 17 minutes, but that's going pretty quickly. I'm usually going to take about half an hour, to do that just because I want to see things. I want to look around. So Bigfoot is a particular Sasquatch. They're the same thing, but he's a famous one. Supposedly he lives in the West in the Rockies, so it's a little different from the Sasquatch, but Sasquatch is like the species. Bigfoot is a particular one. The Yeti is the one that lives in the Himalayas. This park I think it was founded in the early to mid 1930s. I want to say 1938, which is late 1930s, but it's one of the earlier ones that was, because it's close to Washington, D.C. That's something we're going to talk about. And I'm going to give you a wrong figure. It's I say it's 40 miles from Washington, D.C., but it's actually about 65. So it takes about an hour and a bit. Yeah, it is almost 100 years old, which the national parks just celebrated their 100th anniversary. Let's see, a couple years ago. I think 5 years ago. Let's see. We're going to talk about venomous snakes in just a little bit, and we're going to talk about rocks in just a little bit. So why don't we do this? Why don't we jump in, and I'm going to talk about some of those interesting things that I've seen on the trail too. So let's take a little bit of a further walk down the trail, and then we can come back to some of those questions in just a bit.
This little creek here is what's eventually going to lead to that waterfall. Now notice how the terrain here is much different. So this trail is rated as a moderate trail in difficulty. It's pretty well maintained. There's, some rocks and some roots that we got to watch out for, but we're not, really doing anything to clear a path here, which you should never really do anyway. But this trail has been, paved with some crushed stone a little bit, but it's all natural stuff that's found around here. But it's been smoothed out, not quite as smooth as the Limberlost Trail. I wouldn't want to push a wheelchair down here. But this one will get a little bit muddy, a little bit swampy. And part of the principle number 2 is that we want to walk right through the mud because we don't want to expand the trail and to widen it. We walk through the mud so that, we keep the trail looking nice like it does. But this one is kind of interesting because this is an out and back trail, which means we're going to go down it and then we're going to hike back. Now, if you notice, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but we're going down. We're following this creek down this little mountain, little hill, to the waterfall. And doing that, which way do we have to go to get back? We have to climb up. So when I think about your energy levels, and you don't want to climb down too far and then not have enough energy to get back. But we're just getting started, so I feel pretty confident about our ability and energy level. And if we run out of energy, we brought lots of snacks. This one, it's almost like we're hiking in a stream. It's all mud going down here. You need to be kind of careful on this kind of stuff because mud is slippery. But if we walk off the trail, that would actually widen the trail and ruin some of this ecosystem here, but also eliminate spots like that which drain the water off of the trail. And as you can see on this side, it's nice and dry. You'll notice that as we've come down, the stream has gotten wider and it's gotten faster moving. That's exciting. Not too much farther. Follow the stream. There's a big drop off not too far up there, and that's our waterfall. It's a waterfall, sort of. Not the one we want. There it is. There's the one I was talking about. That little stream into that big waterfall. You follow it down the stream. There's a swimming hole over there. So it's a little bit warmer. I'll go swimming. But it is still 57 degrees. So I'm just going to sit here and watch this. Maybe eat a snack. I'm going to skip over principle number 3 for right now because we've been lucky enough to not find any trash. But I do want to skip over to principle number 4, which is to leave what you find. Now, leaving what you find means don't pick up any kind of relics, trash excluded, unless it's historical trash, which means it's over 100 years old. But it also means leave everything the way that you found it. For instance, don't mark on trees, and don't do this. Paint wrecks. I'm sure JJ and Dale love each other very much, but I don't need to hear about it. Okay, I gotta go back up this mountain. This is the part I was worried about, much steeper going up. Similar to the stuff on the rocks, people carving their names on the trees. You see this a lot in old cartoons. It really damages these trees. And I've seen some graffiti that has dates on it going all the way back, like 100 years or more. So you might think it's like a nice thing to commemorate that you were here, or that, you know, you love somebody, but that tree doesn't really appreciate it. And it actually opens it up for infection too, and that could kill this tree. And we are almost back to Limberlost. It's been a bit of a climb, over 1,000 feet coming back. So if the temperature was a lot warmer, it would be much, much harder. You'd lose a lot more water, which is why it's very important to hydrate. They say out here, hydrate or die. Hydrate. Yuck, yuck. I was thinking we were going to get all the way through this hike without having to practice principle number 3. And that one is dispose of waste properly. Here we have a little candy wrapper or something. So pick it up, put it in my trash pocket. Dispose of that waste properly. Now, the other part of dispose of waste properly is your bodily fluids and functions. I'm not going to do that on the trail. I'm going to go to the rest area. We are back on Limberlost. Much, much smoother. Easier on the feet, easier on the lungs. almost back to the car. I'll update with the total mileage and elevation in the parking lot. And we are back at the parking lot. I'm going to take a look at our distance. We did 5.79 miles with 1,519 feet of elevation. Just wanted to pause here for 1 second to show you some of the features of the Limberlost Trail with accessibility. You know, it's crushed gravel. It's wide, 5 feet wide. The maximum slope is 10.3. That's typically 3.5%, which is a pretty low grade. And it has some resting intervals for wheelchairs and such. You can see down here, there's a little bit of a hike profile, and that's like the whole trail sort of stretched out. So, all right, on to the next one. Let's check out some history. So the trail that we were just on is kind of at the base of that little mountain right there, at the point like that. That is Old Rag, and at the top of that mountain, it's really, really rocky. It's a pretty difficult climb, but it's worth the challenge if you can ever get out there.
Okay. Yeah, there was some rushing water there that kind of made the sound a little bit tricky. And there were a couple things that came up on that hike that I feel like we kind of addressed, or were asked some questions that were asked in the chat here. But then there was some that we didn't get to. So my favorite trail, that's a really, really hard question. If I had to say that my favorite trail on the East Coast is definitely the Appalachian Trail. And the Appalachian Trail is my favorite because, as we're going to talk about in just a little bit, it runs all the way from Springer Mountain in Georgia all the way up to Katahdin Mountain in Maine. So it's 2,200 miles long, and I've done different parts of it in a number of different states. I haven't done the whole thing. That takes months. It takes about 6 months to do that. But there are plenty of people from all over the world that travel here to do that particular one. And there was a question about rocks. Again, just like the trees, I don't really know what kinds of rocks they are. I know that there is a lot of talus, which I'm going to talk about a little bit. It might not be in the clips that we see today, but if you look at the end of video clip 3, right before I leave the park, there is some description of talus, and what that is it's rock that was actually got really cold, it froze, and then it broke when it warmed up, and then it caused these giant rock falls. So there's actually rivers of rocks that go through not only this national park, but there are any mountain range in this country, I imagine all over the world, has some of these talus fields, and these are cars. They're rocks the size of cars that are often, fun to jump around and climb on. So this national park, I'm going to look this one up because I don't have the exact date and I don't want to say the wrong thing. I believe it was in the 1930s. We're not getting that one. So see, while I'm looking that up, I'm gonna take some other ones. Have I ever gotten hurt on the trail? So this is kind of a fun fact about me. I am very accident prone. Thank you, EdTech team. 1935, not too far off with 1938. I'm pretty accident prone, but I'm pretty lucky on the trail because I plan ahead and prepare, and I usually hike with these poles that help me keep my balance so that I'm not falling, especially if I'm carrying any weight. I've gotten some stings. I got stung by a wasp once, a little bit of poison ivy, but I bring that first aid kit, so any of that stuff gets taken care of. Now, we won't talk about mountain biking. I won't mountain bike on these trails because they're closed to bikes, but that's where I get my broken tooth. I currently have a broken collarbone. That stuff comes from riding bikes. Much, much, much more dangerous. Hiking, pretty safe in a lot of ways, especially if you're careful. Okay, really good question about how much time you should spend. So this one, I'm actually here for 2 days. I stayed overnight, and I just touched on 3 little highlight hikes. You could spend weeks in the national park. And if you have that time, I highly recommend it. The longest I have spent in a national park was in Yosemite National Park, which is in California, in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And I was there for 12 days, and I only saw a little bit of it. But in those 12 days, I hiked something like 100 miles and climbed like 25,000 feet, which was super, super hard. You have to work up to that. How can somebody get a job at the national park? That's a great question. I actually have a lot of friends who work in national parks, and they studied things like, one of my friends is a invasive species expert for the Park Service. And also it's the Bureau of Land Management, which is sort of the governing body over the National Park Service. They kind of work together. But he works for the Bureau of Land Management, and he does invasive species management all over the country. And he's a scientist, so his specialty is in plants. I have another friend who was a forestry major in high school, or in college rather, and he is now a volunteer coordinator at Smoky Mountain National Park. So again, he kind of studied the sciences and had that route. However, a very popular route into working in the national parks is a lot of folks who are in the military. Once they have finished their tours of duty, the national parks really want to hire people who have, had military service. So a lot of times that's an easy way, or an easier way, to find a way toward being a park ranger. And there are also some interpretive roles where people who have, maybe history backgrounds. Those are typically seasonal and more part-time roles. They wouldn't necessarily be, a career that you could do. However, there are definitely careers in that field. My wife's uncle is actually the guy who designs all of the indoor exhibits at national parks that talk about, some things about the history, some activities that you can do, and any number of things. And he designs those. So if you go into like a visitor center and there's a display there, and his background is in design. So lots and lots of ways that you can get involved with working at national parks. I'd love to go mountain biking in Florida. However, I have not. I have ridden bikes in Florida, but on the road. Some national parks have hotels nearby. Some of them have hotels in them. Shenandoah does have a lodge, but it was farther north, and I stayed in a tent. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Okay. So any other questions that have come up? Go ahead and put them in the chat, but we're gonna probably jump into the next video. The tallest mountain I've ever climbed was a little over 14,000 feet, and it was in Colorado, in the Weminuche Wilderness, which is probably my favorite trail on the western half of the country, because I was there for 8 days. I saw one other person. It was great. Yes, retired folks have lots and lots of job opportunities in the parks. Okay, shall we check out President Hoover?
We're going to check out a little bit of history now. We are here at the Millam Gap Trailhead, and from here we're going to do about a roughly 4-mile hike down to Rapidan Camp. And Rapidan Camp is the summer home of President Herbert Hoover, and he used to come down here and practice his fishing, fly fishing. But there's actually some old properties down there where he used to, host guests to the park, or to this property before it was the national park. So we're going to see some historical structures down there. It'll be pretty cool, and that's where we're really going to think about leaving what we find and not messing with things that are, old and that were there before us. So let's enjoy. I don't know if you guys can see this up here, but we get to practice leave no trace. Principle number 6. got a deer up here. So a couple of them. So we're going to think about the rule of thumb. If I can't cover him with my thumb, then I'm too close. Actually, a whole family over there. Come visit us. So we're staying out of his way. Well, this is his home. Her home. Their home. This is these deer's home, not ours. We're just visiting. So I don't want to be rude to them. It's so cool. Still no bears or sasquatch yet, though. I can tell there's a bunch of other deer over there. I hear them moving. Nice. Wish I knew why, but not very many people use this trail. It's not too difficult, and it goes to something really cool. But one of the nice things about that is because there's so few people on it, there's a lot of critters. First time I saw a bear in this park was on this trail. A little young bear, and he followed us for a little while. And the trouble with young bears is that mama's almost always around. And young bear might not give you too much trouble, but mama bear might get a little upset, I think, if she thinks that you're threatening her baby. So the best way to handle black bears in this part of the country, which there are only black bears here, we don't have grizzly bears or brown bears, is to just make a lot of noise. You know, when I'm out here with scouts or other young people guiding little trips, and we see bears, we just start singing songs. They might look at us a little bit, curiously for a few minutes, but then they kind of get freaked out and they go look for snacks elsewhere. This is really interesting. It's somebody's camping gear. It's a pretty big 4-person tent, a sleeping pad that appear to just be left here. And I'm wondering if they thought about camping somewhere. But, we talked about principle number 2, hike and camp on durable surfaces. But we didn't really talk about where to camp. You want to camp at a site that is found and not made. I have a suspicion that was just heavy gear that was abandoned, but I'm going to leave it just in case somebody comes to pick it up again. There's no place to camp around here. The kiosk said that there are several stream crossings here. I'm kind of excited about those. I don't see them yet, but we're not down to the creek yet. It's got to be a little river if President Hoover came down here to fish. Can't exactly fish on the trail. Or can you? I don't know. Maybe you're fishing for squirrels. Ah, here is our stream crossing. This is an easy one. Looks like the Park Service, whoever's been maintaining this, probably assumes that a lot of people are going to be crossing this, so they gave us some little stepping stones. So I'm going to use these and hopefully not fall into the stream. Pretty easy. Some streams like this, are tough to cross. You have to kind of wade through. I just like to walk through them, get my feet wet, tough it out. Here's another one of those descents, just like with the last hike, we're going down to a river. So rivers don't flow up, so we got to go down with the stream, which means on the way back, we got to climb a little bit. Just remember to, pace yourselves and don't overhike your abilities. It was right here that I saw the bear that one time. And one of the things about respecting wildlife, it applies to principle number 7, which is being considerate in the outdoors. Be considerate of others in the outdoors. And that's, to see a bear, you have to be the bear. So you want to step very lightly and be very quiet. Other hikers will appreciate that as well. Let's be very quiet. The bears like to pull fish. No, they don't. They're black bears. They like to go get water from the stream. Black bears eat berries. Brown bears eat fish. I don't think we're going to be so lucky. Maybe we'll see a squatch though. Maybe next time. This is Rapidan Camp, where Herbert Hoover had his retreat from the White House. It's a pretty interesting property. It's got his cabin where he worked, did a lot of stuff, wrote some papers and things, but it also has the in Washington D.C. we have the White House. Down here we have the Brown House, and the Brown House is where he would spend some time in the summer. But he would also have guests here. And there's a lot of historical artifacts here. Not that white vehicle. And there's a Park Service vehicle. So this is the Creel. This is where Hoover's aides lived. The Brown House is further down. We're gonna go check it out. There was a mess hall here. You can see some remnants of it there. And one of the interesting things about this property is that there are all kinds of artifacts from the era just kind of strewn about on the ground. The trouble is if you pick one up, not only are you violating leave no trace principle number 4 to leave what you find, but you'll also get a really hefty fine from the National Park Service. Natural artifacts such as rocks and things like that, like if you take a plant or a rock, that is $10,000 per rock. If it is a historical artifact, it's more than that. But not all these buildings remain. You know, here we have the remnants of, looks like a chimney from one of the buildings. And then here we have Hoover's summer residence, the Brown House. One of the reasons why Shenandoah National Park is the most visited national park is because it's pretty close to Washington, D.C. It's only about 40 miles? Have a look at a map, I'll tell you for sure. But there's the Brown House. It wasn't labeled the Brown House when Hoover lived here, I don't think. There's also a house for the Prime Minister. Prime Minister stayed here. Guessing that's the Prime Minister of England. Yep, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Ramsay MacDonald. He's one of the most famous people to use the camp for a visit. This is my favorite. We discussed the proposed camp as we explored conditions necessitate a rather biggish establishment. National is a map of Rapidan and all of its properties. I'm burning daylight, so I'm gonna head back up the hill. It's very, very cool that this exists still. And the reason it exists is because people wanted to preserve it. If they had, taken a stone here and there, or, come in and like vandalize the property, it wouldn't be here for us to enjoy. But here we still have it. You can still see this historical spot. You could even hang out on the porch, right where President Hoover used to have tea. Check out where we went fishing. Creek down there. I love this little bridge. It's so peaceful and nice. Unlike the walk back up the mountain. It's not going to be peaceful and nice. But that's okay. It's part of the fun. I just love how peaceful it is out here. All the stuff going on in our world, and with school and home and friends and family and all that. Sometimes that can be tough, and it's kind of nice to just get away for a little bit. And taking a hike is a perfect way to do that, I think. And while this hike up is a little bit strenuous, it's not too bad. And when I'm done with it, I'll have the satisfaction of having climbed back up that. We talk about levels of fun. Level 1 fun is fun while you're doing it, and it's fun to talk about. Level 2 fun is not fun while you're doing it, but it is fun to talk about. And level 3 fun is not fun to do while you're doing it, and it's not fun to talk about. I don't know that I've yet to experience level 3 fun on a hike, but lots of level 2. Lots and lots of level 2. Lots of level 2 in life, And if we think about our experiences and we learn from them, that's called growth, And that's true in school. Don't give up just because it's hard. Power through it. And then you'll feel better when you've accomplished that task, and then you'll grow from that, and it won't be so challenging next time. Although climbing up is always challenging. You just get better at it mentally, I think. This isn't too bad though. Kind of over the rocks though. Okay, to type 2 fun. Hooray. As I suspected, somebody came and collected that tent and that sleeping pad. I think it was a ranger that was in here. I talked to him. I wanted to get him to speak to you guys, but he was really busy. So we're almost done with this trail. It's all uphill from here. Just kidding. It levels out. It's been all.
Okay. Perfect timing there. Just a few things that we didn't quite get to cover. There's a whole third hike that you can link to on the agenda that I sent out, and there's a lot of other resources that are on there as well. But a couple of things that I didn't want to end without pointing out. We didn't get to every single principle of Leave No Trace because I didn't see too many people and I didn't see too much trash. But one of the things about, someone asked if I had ever gotten hurt. If I had gotten hurt, I would have been okay because I didn't mention this at the top of the hour. You always got to have a buddy. My buddy did not want to be on camera at all, but he was with me the entire time. And he saw lizards. I didn't see any lizards on this hike, but that is actually one of the things that I see the most of. I see lizards, little newts. More often I see evidence of activity of critters more than I see the actual critters. But the definitely lizards, small rodents, things like that. But I just leave them alone. They're just kind of there to visit. There are a ton of trails in this national park. I have not hiked all of them. There are books and books and books of those trails. Have I ever found a hurt animal? I have found a hurt animal. Unfortunately, I don't often have the resources to take care of those in the backcountry because they require animal rehabilitators, and I am not one of those. So a lot of times we have to let nature kind of take its course. And it's sad, but you know, that's part of nature. And this is going to sound kind of morbid, but when animals pass on, they usually leave behind a really cool skeleton, and those are really fun to find on the trail. But we leave them when we leave them where they are. So just a couple of things that I want to point out before we leave, and we could talk about this all day, but I would like to share just a couple of things in this agenda that you could use as kind of follow-up activities in your classroom right after this, or you guys could do them on your own a little bit later. So in addition to the principles, there's a game called Talking Trash where we pick up trash, right? And here's a bunch of different kinds of trash that I found on the trail. All of these are from Google Images. None of these are things that I actually took. But if you want to put those in order of how long it takes to biodegrade, you can do that on the Jamboard. You may need to make a copy of it so that you can play with it without affecting another classroom. But I did put a key on our agenda so you can see some of the surprising biodegradation rates. There's some on there that don't actually ever biodegrade. And I have a friend who is an archaeologist with the Park Service, and a big part of his job is studying some old, I won't tell you which one, but there's one of those that he studies a lot of. There's a links to the Kids on Parks trails, and those are the other track trails that are around. And there is one in Florida. Fortunately, it's in Gainesville, a little bit far from y'all, but it's still not too terribly far. And then I've also given you guys links to a couple of places where you can plan hikes and take a look at maps. You guys could also watch the clip number 3, where I talk a little bit about camping, where my friend and I camped, and how we were careful with fire because we didn't build one. We used a stove. And then there are lots of ways to review those 7 leave no trace principles. And those in the wrap up there and those resources, there are all kinds of things that you could do independently or together as a group. But just a quick recap. Those principles of leave no trace, it's most important that we leave only footprints and we take only photographs, or we take only memories. But we want to plan ahead and prepare, hike and camp on durable surfaces, dispose of waste properly, pick up litter, don't go to the bathroom on the trail. 4, leave what we find, including the skeletons, sometimes the herd animals. Number 5 is to be careful with fire. 6, respect wildlife, those herd animals. And then number 7, be kind to other visitors. Please, my contact information is in that agenda. Send any questions my way, and I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was absolutely inspiring. We loved learning about the 7 leave no trace behind principles, and we are so grateful for you to share your hiking experience with all of our students. So on behalf of the whole school district, we are so happy that you joined us today. And teachers, we have a lot more in store for you this week. We have 3 more virtual learning experiences planned. So please join us tomorrow, May 24th at 10 a.m. with Janice Dean, a meteorologist who is also an author of Freddie the Frogcaster. We have another national park tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. to explore Yellowstone National Park. And then please join us on Wednesday, May 25th at 1 p.m. to travel the world with the Norton Museum of Art. So we hope that you can join us. Today's recording is also going to be posted on our website, which you see here on the screen, which you can find at edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. We also see here on the left circled area, we have the resources from Tim and resources from our virtual learning experiences from tomorrow and Wednesday will all be added on our website as well. Again, edtechtraining.palmbeachschools.org. And on behalf of the entire school district and the training team at the Educational Technology Department, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the last week of school. Have a great day.